Welcome to the North Alabama Report, or as the cool people with a fear of multiple syllables call it, NAR, a term also used for no by late 18th century Australian pirates. Should we make him walk the plank? NAR. This is the North Alabama Report, a report on all the fascinating and important things that happen in North Alabama. Let's start with the big news. Huntsville International Airport has been voted the #1 small airport in the United States for the second year in a row. This achievement is a testament to what a small group of employees can do when there are no restrictions on how many times you can vote for best small airport in the United States. Vivian Vasquez, who runs the airport, voted 78,282 times. Her desire to be the best is obvious, and the quality of leaving nothing to chance as a worker in the airline industry is comforting. She and her team captured 300,000 more votes than all the other airports in the running combined. From the tarmac workers to the janitors to the executives, they voted, cleared their cookies, refreshed the page, and voted again. This was a team effort and indicative of the work ethic here in North Alabama. So great job, guys, on setting the bar high. I will say, this accomplishment does give one pause as to whether we might consider removing the restrictions on our political elections as well. Perhaps being able to vote more than once would allow us to express not just what we want, but indeed how bad we want it. Something to think about. Okay, so over on the Arsenal in Huntsville, Redstone Arsenal. For those who don't know, it's about 38,000 square acres of pure federal government. It's where missiles and rocket engines and budgets all go to blow up. It's a mix of military and engineers and bureaucrats and law enforcement. It's kind of a town in and of itself where men and women with PhDs create complicated problems that are solved by people with GEDs who know how to actually weld or put something together. It's just a blend of flat tops and comb overs and mullets and bobs and ponytails and jaw lines and double chins, all working together to do something extraordinarily expensive for the good of America, rarely to be usable within less than 10 to 15 years. It's a testing ground, and they're out there pushing the envelope. It's awesome. So, Redstone has also become the home to what's affectionately known as the FBI's second headquarters. Sally Fleck, an HR specialist with the FBI, was possibly asked out on Tuesday by an Army captain she has run into over the past couple months at a Euro place on the Arsenal. He works with the Army Missile Command, and now to be clear, she thinks she was asked out. She's still working it through. They saw each other again at the Euro place, and they talked for over 25 minutes with each other, sitting kind of 2 tables away. And it's always an easy conversation with him. And as he left, he simply suggested that they meet again there next week at the same time and the same day. And yes, I know it's not the Empire State Building, and this isn't quite as cinematic or romantic as When Harry Met Sally or An Affair to Remember, but for Sally Fleck, this was a big deal. He does have lovely eyes, and Sally is a single gal, and this proposition gave her so many things to overthink, and overthinking is what makes her so good at HR. So many people do their jobs without overthinking anything, and she's able to step in and really help them to overthink. Was this, in fact, a date? Was that what he was proposing, a date? Deep down, she hoped it was, or at least she liked the idea that it was, at least that it was a date in his mind. That was where she landed as the important thing. And if it is a date, is there a problem professionally with going to said date, same time, next week? These were work hours they were in. That would be work hours, but he's Army and she's FBI. She was really going to have to dig into her binders on this one. So much to overthink. She's pretty sure he's interested in her. He did glance at her calves, which she knows are fantastic and is rightly one of the reasons she wears pencil skirts all the time. And she happened to see him doing some PT, physical training, with other troops one morning, and she was impressed that he was able to pull off the tiny shorts things they wear called silkies or ranger panties. So a heads up, There is a real potential for genuine chemistry brewing on the arsenal beyond the normal beakers and periodic charts over in the labs. Oh, and over in Missile Command, there was a retirement party this week for General Taxton. It was time. Both he and his wife agree it's just time to move on to the next phase and make 4 times as much working for the missile companies whose missiles he had convinced the U.S. government to buy over the next decades. And so rarely in life does one get to be both the buyer and then the seller in the same transaction. But as I said, this is a federal facility, and miracles like this are possible with the might of the U.S. government behind you. And over to the west, in Muscle Shoals on the Tennessee River, 17-year-old homegrown YouTube music sensation Abby Street, that is her given name, began recording her first official album. As expected, it's a country album, and though her father is a country music executive, that's not the reason she got a record deal. She lives just across the Tennessee River in Florence with her mother. Her father lives just north of North Alabama in Nashville, and Abby insisted that they record at the famed Muscle Shoals recording studio where the likes of Cher and the Rolling Stones and her idol Bob Seger have recorded. Abby, who has billions of streams of her music, is a viral sensation with undeniable talent. Her father, on the other hand, is quite deniable in terms of anything that would be regarded as talent, but his shallowness and moral malleability, though causing the divorce from Abby's mother, has been an effective tool in his career as a music executive. And the signing of his daughter is a feat no one thought possible and will likely be the pinnacle of his career. He was eventually able to convince her that if she signed with any other major record labels, and who were all offering big money record deals, she would have to fight with record executives she had no practice beating. And if she signed with him, she would have the advantage of having manipulated him for years. And she did have to admit that as much as she in many ways despised him and did not want to work with him or bring him success, though she loved him, she presumed in some way, she was sure that she could get him to let her do whatever she wanted. And creative freedom was her biggest concern, and so she signed with him. And this week, she began recording, and it is reported from the studio that at one point, an angel sitting on her shoulder as she sang a track she wrote called Where the River Bends cried little angel tears. And now perhaps it was just a figment of audio mixer Lonnie Champagne's imagination, or perhaps a result of the microdosing, but he swears he saw a small angel shed little angel tears, and he also promises it was the most beautiful 8 bars he has ever recorded. And I think it's safe to say that Abby's album may be one of the most anticipated freshman albums ever recorded, and it is so exciting to have it here in North Alabama. And speaking of angels, also in Florence this week at the Cowboy Church, which is a come as you are church, and as you are usually entails Wranglers and boots and spurs and Stetson hats, but it doesn't have to. There are a few kind of goth-leaning biker types in the mix. Needless to say, they are a tough, hardy congregation there. If it was a different tradition, it might be called Our Lady of the Gritted Teeth. Instead of an annual rummage sale, they do a rodeo. Anyway, Cleary O'Breed showed up for the service this Sunday in the riding arena where they hold it for the first time since his brother died 8 months ago in an auto accident that Cleary was the driver in. It was an interesting moment when Cleary walked in quite late to the service, and Pastor Fred had just told the congregation to open their Bibles to Genesis 4, which is the account of Cain killing his brother Abel. And Pastor Fred realized that the rest of his sermon on taking care of your brother was going to be a bit awkward. And Pastor Fred, as can happen, was suddenly flooded with doubts about himself and his ministerial abilities and his judgment, and he questioned his ability to discern God's will. How is it that Cleary O'Breed walked in right at that moment? He must be doing something wrong. But everyone dutifully opened their Bibles to the story of Cain and Abel, And Cleary sat down and someone shared their open Bible with him. And when there was a pause, eyes went from their Bibles up to Fred. And he swallowed, not exactly gulped, but a fairly noticeable swallow. And not knowing what else to do, he began to read. He read slowly this story of a brother killing his own brother because of jealousy. And somehow, because of the presence of Cleary, the 800-pound emotional gorilla in the room of this man having also inadvertently, in his case, killed his brother 8 months ago, the weight and the reality and the heartbreak of the story of Cain murdering his own brother Abel, who grew up with him, who he must have played with, who he must have loved. For Fred, this story suddenly stepped out of the allegorical or historical and became real and personal. And Pastor Fred saw himself and his brothers and his sons and his brothers and his daughters and their sisters. He saw the human family in Cain and Abel. He could be Cain and he could be Abel. And it was heartbreaking. And he so desperately wanted to take it back for Cain. He wanted to heal that murder. And tears came to his eyes. And Fred is not one for tears. He's not one of those pastors who put the cry in Christ, who does the waterworks every week to prove their depth. But nonetheless, he cried. And everything that he had dreaded just moments before to say in front of Cleary, basically his whole sermon he was second guessing, just suddenly seemed right. About man's responsibility to his brother, to his fellow man. And he pushed forward into that sermon, and Cleary listened with intense focus to every word of that sermon. And focus has been a challenge for Cleary. And indeed, texting and eating while driving was ultimately the reason that he missed that turn 8 months ago. And when Pastor Fred ended his sermon with Jesus' words in the New Testament, Matthew 5, where Jesus says, "So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift." And Cleary was listening, and he wondered how he might be reconciled to his brother. How does one get forgiveness when the would-be source of forgiveness is gone because of something you've done? And Pastor Fred saw the look in Cleary's eyes, and he knew Cleary was not going to be the same person he had been. He was always a good guy, if not fairly easily distracted, but Fred could see something new in Cleary. He didn't feel confident that Cleary would necessarily be back when he walked out those doors, but he felt Cleary was in good hands. And at the end of the service, Cleary received more hugs than when he had scored the game-winning touchdown in the state championship 2 decades ago, and it felt good. It's an interesting thing. Cleary woke up last Sunday morning and found himself, though late, going to church. And somewhere in his mind, he simply decided not to stop himself. And that, friends, is all I have to report at the moment. Thank you for listening. I'm Ryder Kenyon, and this has been the North Alabama Report.